Okay, Chisa, I just have to think, this is actually shit. And, oh yes, so basically, um, let me try to say this over. About a minute or two. This week, the parasha that we read today, Parasha Truma, goes into all the details of the components of the Mishkan socket, the pillars, and the curtains with all the colors, and the purple thread and the red crimson thread and all of that. And it seems it actually is a bit repetitive, and it goes on and on for quite some time. And so we think basically in life that sometimes these things are not saying, well, who cares how many sockets and how many sockets it had to have and what the measurements were. We just know that the things stand and what does it look like? What does it have to be? So it's also like with the mitzvah. Sometimes you can do a small minor or seemingly minor action, which is a good deed, and it might have the same effect as something seemingly more important. So that's actually my take on it. So everything that you see is written there. It's obviously for a reason. It's not just they were trying to fill up the pages. Yeah, that's what I'd say. We have to take everything. Everything is important, even if it might seem insignificant. I'm saying if it's written in the Torah and in life, many things are important.
Yeah.
Probably most.
I think on what you were saying, I was thinking quite a bit about Bava Kamma, because there are certain points that we've reached in it that kind of drive us a little crazy, even though we're dedicated to it.
Yeah.
And please God, when we finish this book, we might look at Gemara Brochas just because of the variety. And who knows, that might drive us mad too. I'm not sure. But the essence of it, I think, is to just carry on learning. And one day after 120, we'll get clarity as to what it actually did for us. I suppose there are many things in terms of health and other things we do in our lives that don't seem to have an immediate effect. You have that particular donut and you don't think it's having an adverse effect. You're eating healthily for a week and you don't feel any better. In fact, you feel lousy and depressed. We just have no idea in terms of consequence or ramifications. And that was the one thing that seemed a little bit weird is when I was in Sfat. And I thought of you, Gavin, is that, all these people from California and they're into the meditation and this Kabbalistic thing, and it's a nice feeling. It's not real. They're in that giddy in love sort of stage with Yiddish chart where it's all like kind of Madonna, hippie-ish and that sort of thing, but it's not, there's no sort of understanding. Do you get what I'm saying? So, all right, guys, speaking about going to something that was relatively, Kevin asked a question last time. He wanted to get a bit of clarity on what are we dealing with. Are we dealing with issues of robbery or what are we dealing with? So there were two issues. The first issue was one of robbery, that about stealing currency and that currency getting either physically damaged or conceptually damaged because the particular form of currency was either discontinued or devalued, one of the two. And the second issue was with regards to loans. What happens when you're lending money to a fellow Jew and how are you to be repaid back? We'll wait for Gavin. Gavin, you've disappeared.
Sorry. I'm trying to find something. I've got a power failure here. Just give me 1 second. I apologize.
Sure, there's no reason to apologize. It's a pleasure to help. Let's just wait for you, important part of the group. Oh, and a moment's
Sorry, I'm so
silence
sorry.
for the
Thank you.
fallen
Thank you, guys.
soldiers in the Ukraine. Okay. All right. All right, guys. Gav, we were saying that Kevin asked last time what were the issues that we were talking about. And the one was discernible damage and non-discernible damage. We're talking about physical damage to actual currency versus a conceptual damage with regards to currency, either deflation or discontinuation of that particular form of currency. And we are saying that it would seem like Rav Yehuda is contradicting the Mishnah. He said that if it steals currency, but it wasn't cracked, but it just continues in form of a later currency, how could that be discerned as damage that the robber gets to keep the discontinued currency and reimburse the victim for full currency? Because it seems to be in our Mishnah that when there's teruma and it becomes tameh, or anything non-discernible to the qualitative nature of the product. In other words, the wine has not soured, the fruit has not rotted. It's the same thing with the currency. It's not tangible, but the value certainly did tank. So the interesting thing of it is Rav Yehuda said to Rava, listen, it is discernible. Because when you look, Kevin, at currency, the currency in terms of how it looks. So I gave you an example last time of the $100 bill. And that's changed over the last 10 years of America. And it's still accepted in Israel, the older currency. But there's no question that the banks prefer the newer currency because eventually the older currency will get out of circulation and somebody will be left losing money. So what Rav Yehuda is saying to Rabba, which was very clever, is he's saying, look, it's got a physical manifestation where it looked different to it looked before. So therefore, old-looking currency, even if it's in impeccable condition, shows that it's no longer in circulation or deteriorated in value. And therefore, because of the actual distinct physical characteristics that you can discern it, it's as if the money is getting destroyed. If it's imperceptible in terms of physical change, then if it's a conceptual change, unfortunately, the robber can return it to the victim as is, which was quite a clever way to deal with our Mishnah. Guys, I thought it was very clever. Okay, so what did we then discuss? We had a related matter about loans. So if a Jew lends his fellow money and fixes payment on a coin, and what are we saying is that I lend merchandise to my fellow Jew at a fixed price, okay? And that's going to be paid at a later date. In other words, I lend wheat worth 10 selaim to my fellow Jew and stipulated that the borrower must pay me 10 selaim at a later date. Okay, let's keep it as a simple matter. And then the coin became disqualified, meaning the old seller, which was a coin with a different leader's head on it, had been fixed as the medium of repayment, and that became disqualified in a particular province where the deal took place, and a new seller was placed in circulation. So what's the opinion there? Rav says the borrower must give the borrower must give the creditor his payment with a coin that passes as currency at the time of payment. In other words, since the borrower accepted upon himself to repay the loan in currency, he must pay with the new currency because the old coins are no longer considered currency or anything worthwhile. You've got to honor your obligations. Shmuel says the borrower may repay with the coins used at the time of the loan and say to the lender, go and pass it as currency in Mishan. So what's this place? Mishan is just an example, guys, of a distant province, like near Babylonia, where this example took place, where you'd have to schlep a little, but it's still a place where the old coins are accepted as currency. So true, the borrower accepted upon himself to repay the loan in currency. He's not repaying it in a dead currency, It's just not a currency that the deal is valid in the location that the deal did take place. So the borrower accepted upon himself to repay the loan in currency. Now, as long as those currency is still valid somewhere, then that would suffice and can be used as payment. Okay? Now, the Gemara has to qualify Shmuel's ruling because Rav Nachman explained it as follows. It said, look, Rav Nachman says it seems reasonable that Shmuel's ruling that the borrower can repay with old disqualified coins, because it passes as currency in Mishan, only refers to where the lender has to journey to Mishan in any event. In other words, it's not because of this particular issue. Does that make sense, guys? In other words, he was going there anyway. Because it's not a special sort of expense, because special expenses would have to be taken into account. Now, the problem here has to do with the fact that how the transaction has taken place. Because Rashi explains that like this dispute between Rav and Shmuel pertains only to the case mentioned in the Gemara. In other words, if you lend your fellow Jew merchandise and then fix payment on a coin. But if you actually lend money, the borrower can repay only received. In other words, he in the exact currency he received. So the only time there could be a question is if there's something in the way. So, for example, merchandise where that might create a fluctuation in what the merchandise is worth. Now, coinage, do you repay with goods or do you repay with coins, etc.? So Tosfot understands it differently to Rashi. There's an interesting note that I found here. And it's an issue about how the lender stipulated that he be repaid with money, and when he didn't make such a stipulation. So the lesson is that you've got to be very, very specific, that you need to state in writing how you want to be paid. And if you say the word money, which is relatively vague, it could be with actual currency, but currency in the way that you lent it. So it's better in a contract when you're lending money to say, if there is a newer currency that replaces the old, let us be paid in the new currency. Now, the Gemara is not quite happy with Rav Nachman's response, because Rav Nachman said the only time that Shmuel said can repay it in a currency that has been disqualified in the area that the deal took place is if the lender is going to an area where that currency that is paid back in can be redeemed without reasonable shlim. And the Gemara doesn't agree with it because Rava challenged Rav Nachman from the following brisa. It says one may not deconsecrate Ma'aser Sheni on coins that do not pass as currency. How so? If he had Kosovat or Yerushalmi coins of other or earlier kings which no longer pass as currency, cannot deconsecrate Ma'aser Sheni upon them. So what's the implication there? That coins of later kings, although they pass as currency in other provinces, are similar to coins of earlier kings in that they do not pass as currency in their current location, and we do consecrate Ma'aser Sheni upon them. So what it's actually saying is that the Brisa gives an example of Yerushalmi coin or Kosovat coin, which was by Bar Kochba. And it gives examples of coins of earlier monarchs, and they don't presently pass as currency anywhere in the world. So it implies then that coins that do pass as currency somewhere in the world, guys, although similar to the coins mentioned in the Brisa, that they don't pass as currency in that particular place, can be used for deconsecration. So evidently, the owner will not necessarily be traveling to that place and pass them as currency there, because the owners have to take the coins to Jerusalem to buy food with them there. So they're still considered currency, otherwise you wouldn't be allowed to deconsecrate it. So the question is, how would Rav Nachman say that coins valid only in other places are regarded as Shmuel as currency, only if they are being paid to a person that's traveling to that place? In other words, his objection is that you don't have to be traveling to that place in order to be passed currency that's no longer valid in your province where you lent the money. You can pay in that old currency anyway. And if the person makes a special trip, it's their problem. So not everybody agrees, because there's this discussion with Rashba and other Rishonim, and they say it's not only a challenge to Shmuel's position, because that's what the Gemara is saying. It's Rav Nachman's explanation of Shmuel. It's saying it's also a challenge to Rav, because Rav is actually more stringent. Rav maintains what, guys? That if you going to pay back currency, you have to pay back currency in the most modern currency available at that location where the deal took place. Meaning, if there was currency that's discontinued in that place and you lent that person currency then, you need to be paid in current currency which is available in your particular province. And if that's the case, this is an argument to that, because we're saying then, how do you deconsecrate with currency that's only available in a certain place, not currency that's completely closed? So that seems to be contradicting both Rav and Shmuel, if you look at this brisa. Okay, so Rav Nachman has
Damon, can I just ask a question about that? Sorry to interrupt you.
Sure, no problem, not about
deconsecrate, you see, all of us know that deconsecrate means it's designated for the temple and can't be used. Does it have any relation to this? Because I didn't.
Yeah. So what it's saying is as follows: is that basically what you want to do is eliminate a schlep factor. Is that you want to be able to use certain items. And those items have got a bit of a problem, because it means that if you've got a particular animal where there's Ma'aser Sheni on that, you've got to take it all the way from Babylonia to Jerusalem. That's going to come at a huge cost and a huge schlep, and it could kill the animal. So Ma'aser Sheni it's the second type, yeah? And it has to be separated in the first, second, fourth, and fifth years of the Shemitah cycle. But you've got to take it there to Jerusalem and eat it there. So if it's fruit, etc., it could end up going rotten by the time you take it there in a heavy sun. So what you do is you basically put those value in terms of coins, and then those coins you use to buy something in Jerusalem and consecrate it in Jerusalem. So now you're going to be dealing with a currency issue, because is the currency valid in the place where you're doing the deconsecration or where you're buying the item? That's what we got established. In other words, it can't be the same. You might not have a currency that is valid both in Jerusalem and in Babylonia. So where do you have to do it? Where the currency is valid in Babylonia, you're deconsecrating, or where you're buying the consecrated item with the money? Where is that validity? And that will determine what the halacha is. At the moment, the only problem we're saying is that we're talking about a case where you can deconsecrate on a currency that's no longer valid in that particular province, and you have to go to another province. So if you can deconsecrate on that basis, it means that the schlep factor, according to Rav Nachman, you're trying to save the lender schlep factor by saying that the borrower can only pay him in that particular currency that's valid in a province that he's traveling to. But if he's not traveling all the way there, the borrower has to pay the lender in a currency that's valid in a particular province where the deal's taking place. With Rav, there's no issue, because Rav says you can only pay in currency, the latest currency of where the transaction took place. The issue is how to explain Shmuel, and Rav Nachman says can only explain Shmuel if there's no schlep to the lender. The borrower can't inconvenience the lender. Whereas the Bryce is basically saying, well, you can, as long as the currency isn't discontinued or deconsecrated, so to speak. Not discontinued or devalued. Okay? So what we're saying is here, well, if it has been kind of discontinued in the sense that earlier kings don't pass as currency, or you've got Kosovar Yerushalmi coins, how can you can't deconsecrate Ma'aser Sheni upon that. That's a fact. You can only do deconsecration on later coins. that are still valid. So that's the issue. So Rav Nachman replies to Rava, and he said, look, what are we dealing with here in the Brisa? He says you're dealing with the case where the monarchies are not particular about one another and allow people in their countries to hold foreign currencies. So what he was saying is, look, even though the owner of Ma'aser Sheni is not traveling to that foreign location, the partially discontinued coins of the later kings are still considered currency because you can pass it on to currency of merchants that come to Jerusalem, come from distant locations. In other words, it's like you go to Israel and you go to money lenders, and no one would accept South African rands. But if I took dollars, you can take it to a exchange shop and they give you what that currency is in shekels. So the only thing Rav Nachman is saying to Rava is that, look, you've got to know if it's a time that's amiable for trade. So if certain countries are at war with other countries, or they're having very difficult fiscal policies where they don't allow any foreign currency, then there's a problem, because then you can't unload the coins. But as long as you can unload it in your particular province, even though it's not a common currency, because there are people that are trading in that province from foreign lands, you don't have a problem. And therefore, even if the person is not going to that foreign land, you can give it to them in a foreign currency because they're able to deal with one of the merchants there at a money exchange shop. But the minute you make somebody schlep to a province or a different country in order to get rid of the money you've paid them back on, that's a heck of a problem, unless you know they're going there. So Ravada's got an explanation, and he basically said, look, monarchies that issue new coins, the reason that they don't allow foreign coins, or even their own disqualified coins, is not because they're trying to take their their constituents out of revenue. What happens there is you've got to take the old coins and you've got to take it to the mint. And what they do is they melt down the silver, because the country then had to base their currency on the worth of the coin. So you had a gold standard, or you had a case where you could redeem originally currency for that value in gold. But now you're just printing money, and it's based on a concept. It's not backed by the value of the coin. In those days, the reason why they made money out of circulation is a new king, out of ego, wanted his own face imprinted on a coin. And if he discontinued the coin, what you could do is take that coin and that value of silver, Gavin, would be melted down to where you could get the new coin with that value. So you wouldn't be out of pocket. Do you get what I'm saying? Because it was based on actual silver or actual currency. So it wasn't meant to bankrupt the constituents of that province or country. They had to take the old coins, mint them with the new faces, in order for it to be legal financial tender. Does that make sense, Gav?
Yeah, it's a much stronger concept. There's actually a problem in cryptocurrency with that as well, because there's nothing to back it up. If there was something like that, would be wonderful to have that to back it up. What's it called? The actual gold or the silver.
Yeah. Look,
we don't have that today at all. We don't have it in crypto. We don't have it in notes.
We don't have it in normal currency.
Yeah, nothing.
Absolutely. The whole thing can go down like a pack of cards, and then Mashiach will come, because a person will eat his fellow alive. People will be selling their gold watches. A person will be eating his fellow alive, but they'll be selling gold watches for a can of water. You think I'm kidding? It's meaningless. It's all gonna come down like a deck of cards. And in fact, the Panay Yeshua asked Rav Nachman, presumes that Shmuel's ruling refers to where the monarchies are even particular about another's currency. You can even refer to where the recipient is traveling to that district, and that the monarchies allow the holding of foreign currencies, but the ruling applies even when the lender isn't traveling there. So it says, look, the issue is that, is it a case where they're punitive and they search you, or they don't search you? Meaning, what's happening at the airport now is you can only take 25,000 Rand of undeclared money in terms of dollars and up to R1,000,000 per annum if it's declared. Okay, and then you can only take up to $10,000 in America without declaring the source for FICA compliance. So what he's saying there is, look, the Gemara says, according to the explanation when Shmuel, as explained by Rav Nachman, says that you can repay a loan with disqualified currency that is valid elsewhere, and that's the point, valid elsewhere. Only when the lender is traveling to that country. He's referring to where the monarchies are particular about one another and do not allow you to hold foreign currencies. In other words, if you can't deal with local coin exchange places or monetary exchange places, then Rav Nachman is saying in that particular case, you can only give somebody that currency if they're going to that particular currency or country or province. But if he's not, there's no way you're going to be able to get rid of the money without a huge cost. Now, there's another issue that's coming about what happens about this issue with confiscation. Because if they're very, very particular, then you've got a problem. So what Shmuel refers to is where you can bring the money there with difficulty. In other words, you have to schlep a bit and then go to the new place, but they don't actively search the lands for holders of foreign currency. But basically, if they find somebody in possession of foreign currency, they're particular and confiscate it. So the Gemara challenges Shmuel and it says, look, you can't deconsecrate Maaser Sheni and coins from here. When I mean from here, guys, it was written in Eretz Israel that are presently located in Babylonia. And you can't deconsecrate on coins from Babylonia that are presently located in Eretz Israel. But on coins of Babylonia that are presently located in Babylonia, you can deconsecrate Maaser Sheni. And this is the argument against Shmuel. It says, look, at any rate, you can't deconsecrate Maaser Sheni on coins that are presently located in Babylonia if you're in Eretz Israel, even though you're destined to buy the product in Eretz Israel, because the Parsha discusses that it's where you're buying it. In other words, in Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 25, it's talking about that you shall buy it from your hand. In other words, the deconsecration is where the currency is worth something in the area that you're deconsecrating. It's not where the currency is worthwhile when you're buying the new goods. That's the distinction. Does that make sense, guys? And what's happening is there's a problem is because it says when the monarchies are particular, where you can't take Babylonian currency to Eretz Israel, and you're buying it in shekels, but you can't keep shekels in Babylonia because they're actually going to actively confiscate, then you've got a problem. Because there's a difference between illegal currency and actual searches that are going out in terms of active confiscation. Does that make sense, guys? And they say if you've got that particular issue, what you have to have a case of it is that it's bought in the currency of what you're going to do with it there, and then you're going to have to take an animal and use that animal as a currency in the new country. That's the only way you're going to get the coinage across. So I'll repeat the way it says here. It says here that the Gemara is dealing with where the monarchies are very particular about one another, and they actively search and confiscate foreign currencies. And they say, well, then how do you deconsecrate Maaser Sheni and coins of Babylonia that are on Babylonia? Because you can't get them to Eretz Israel and switch them for shekels. So how are you going to buy those deconsecrated coins? And again, you can't use shekels because you can only use the currency according to the pasuk that's valid in the country that you're deconsecrating in. It doesn't matter where you're buying it. It matters where you're deconsecrating it from. So the Gemara says in that particular case, the only thing that you can do is buy an animal in Babylonia and deconsecrate the fruit, take it up to Jerusalem to be slaughtered and eaten. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
All right. So the Gemara addresses the Bryce's ruling that one cannot deconsecrate Maaser Sheni and Babylonian coins that are on Eretz Israel. And it says, we learned in the Brisa they enacted that all coins pass as currency in Jerusalem because of it. Why then can one not deconsecrate Babylonian money that is in Eretz Israel? The Gemara says, Rav Zera said it's not difficult. If you're looking in the Brisa, which states that all coins pass as currency in Jerusalem, the Tana refers to a time when the hand of Israel is dominant over the nations of the world. Whereas in the other Brisa, it states that one cannot deconsecrate Maisa, Shani, and Babylonian coins that are in Eretz Israel, and it's referring to a time period where the nations of the world are dominant over themselves. It uses the euphemism themselves, but what they mean is on us. So what it's actually saying is, when Israel was dominant against the nations, they had it as a trading center. That means all currencies were acceptable in Jerusalem because they wanted to encourage economic growth and merchant trade, and they could use exchanging of currencies. It was a thriving economy. But when the Romans had Jerusalem, they wanted to make basically Jerusalem a vassal state and only work under the currency where the Romans could control it, and not make Jerusalem strong, financially independent of Rome. So then you deal with the consecration issues. So there's a brisa that states the rabbis taught, what is the coin of Jerusalem? It's got David and Solomon on one side and the Jerusalem, the holy city, on the other side. And what is the coin of our father Abraham? It had an old man and an old woman on one side and a young man and a young woman on the other side. So what did that actually mean? That it had Avram and Sarah on the one side and Yitzhak and Rivka on the other side. So basically they were just talking about different coins, and that what the factors of deconsecration depended again on what was going on in the world at the time, how strict the fiscal policies were they actively searching for foreign currencies? If they would just confiscate those currencies but they weren't actively searching, in other words, it's a risk. But it wasn't a risk as long as you didn't display the money. If you did display the money for merchants within that country, it could be confiscated. And therefore, you'd have to travel to Mishan, but they wouldn't actively search. And when you got to Mishan, you could decant the money. So Shmuel is saying as long as there's no schlep factor, that's the answer according to Rav Nachman. And according to some other opinions, even if there is a schlep factor, as long as it is can be used somewhere provincially, even though not the province that the transaction took place. Whereas Rav's saying, no, don't inconvenience the lender. The borrower has to pay with the latest currency in the province where the deal took place. All right, guys, we're done with that detail. We're going to get into more interesting stuff. And I hope that's been helpful.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
All
How
right,
you
guys.
Kevin? I didn't see you
Yeah,
come
yeah.
back in.
No, I'm still on the bus. Can you see it's moving?
Yeah,
Can
it's
you see
moving.
it?
It's
Yeah.
moving. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but it's actually looking a
Don't
bit
get dizzy,
rocky.
eh? Don't get dizzy. I just had it like at the front in the VIP seats here, like a first class in the plane. No, it's
It looks
moving.
It looks like you're taking a boat, not a boat.
No. What's happening is that bus is very homely.
Exactly, Arthur.
So,
I think it's
so
very rocky.
my brocha to you guys is that you marry somebody pretty, not homely. You know they've got that expression, homely looks. Okay.
No, I'm not familiar with. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with you and us. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Anyway, I trust you guys.